Okay, for the next part of the picture frame project, some of my students want to add in some shapes so that it's not just a geometric square, which is fine. We talk about layout in class, so let's do, for this one, I'm going to make a heart pattern here. And I'm going to incorporate a new tool, and I'm going to talk a little bit about layout in terms of how you could do that and make things symmetrical. The first thing that you're going to want to do if you're going to create a heart, obviously, is figure out where the heart peaks together and then where the actual peak is. And I'm going to use a ruler to help me. So if I have 5.5 inches, I know that the center is 2 3/4. Okay? So I'm going to make my mark here up top at 2 3/4. Okay? So that I know here where my symmetrical center is. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. I'm going to mark 2 3/4. Again, I'm not a good artist, so I try and take some of the artwork out of this and try and make it a logical shape. I'm going to use a square. I'm going to come down, let's say about 1.5 inches. I'll do 2 inches. So if I go down 2 inches here, and then I write myself a line across here lightly. Okay. And I can even, I'm not going to do that. So now, at least I have some idea of sketching in a shape to make things kind of sort of symmetrical. Because again, I don't consider myself to really be very artistic. So here we can use some of the layout tools to help us to create, and again, even though I don't have a lot of artistic ability, I can use my marks as reference points in my layout, which is convenient. The next tool that we're going to use that's going to cut some of these angles that we couldn't cut using a quick saw or a backcut saw is going to be a coping saw. And the benefit of a coping saw is that it has a very thin, very flexible blade, and the heel up here, or the loop of the saw, gives me the ability to move the saw around when I'm working with my material. So I'm going to take this, and the first thing I'm going to do is cut the top arc here and try and cut the top of my heart. I'm going to set this back in the vise. And now I'm going to use the same technique to get into the material, where I'm going to draw the saw back towards me. I'm going to set the heel of the blade here, and then I'm going to draw it back 3 times to give me that notch, to give me my initial cut. When I'm working with a saw like this, I always want to try and line the blade up as best I can with the angle that I'm going to cut, so that I'm not coming in at 90 degrees and then having to make this really sharp turn. That puts a lot of stress on the blade, that will break blades, that will make your work harder. So I'm going to try and give myself, again, the angle that my heart is here. So if I'm going to start at the top of the lobe of this side of the heart, here I go. So 1, 2, 3, and now that I'm in, what I'm doing with this saw, it's very important that I keep the saw blade perpendicular to the material. If I start to turn it or change the angle here that's not 90 degrees, my cut is going to suffer and it's going to look poor. So every single step of the way while I'm cutting, okay, I'm down on my line here. Now, as I want to make that turn, that gradual arc of the heart, what I'm doing is twisting my wrist, so you can watch my wrist as I start to cut this material. And you'll start to see where I get that nice lobe. Now I'm going to come back at it this way, and I'm going to do the same thing where I create my notch by going 3 times. Again, keeping the saw nice and perpendicular the whole time. You can go nice and slow. The saw cuts very well. Okay, it's definitely not rough. When I get down to the bottom there, the little valley of my heart there, I'm just going to walk the blade back out nice and easily. And then I'm going to come over to this side, and I'm going to redo the same thing. I'm in the material. My blade is still 90 degrees here. Okay, and I'm twisting my wrist to make that arc now as I'm cutting. Again, see that nice 90? That's very important. Roughly speaking, you can see where I have my two lobes. Now what I want to do is try and round that out a little bit. And here I'm coming back. I'm going to move away from the sole. And I'm going to go to my different files. So I'm going to start with a coarse file to try and shape it. Again, I'm using two hands, keeping the file perpendicular, again, not turning myself on some weird angle here so that I wind up cutting the wood the way that I want. Here you can see some of that chip out that I was talking about. But again, this would be my finished side, this would be my bottom, so I'm not really concerned if things get chipped out of there. But what I should have now that I finished with the coarse file is two nice symmetrical lobes. I'm going to go to the medium file. And again, if you look, there's a lot of sawdust coming down here, taking off a lot of material. As I get to the finer files, you'll see that the grain pattern starts to stick off. There's a couple of problems. And you can see, because what we're doing is we're actually starting to smooth the wood down. And I go from a medium to a fine file. Again, same technique where I'm pushing down hard on the four-stroke, and then picking back up, and then moving back into the material kind of in that rotational movement. Okay, we're in a good position. I'll show this to you real fast. And you can see where I'm using my layout to cut my lines using a specialized saw, the coping saw. And then I'm using my files, the three different types of files, to smooth that off and start to create the shape. And this is how we would start to create some more varied shapes in our picture frame.